It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday, we're talking about the Diddy thing. Because the press has gone interesting on it, and there's been a lot of controversy, and I didn't do anything while it was ongoing because I learned my lesson on the Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing, but I did follow it because it was one of those cases where the charges were trying to make the best of it because they couldn't, the statute of limitations had lapsed on a straight up domestic battery charge. And so they went with federal charges that were open to them. And I mean, if you want to take issue with the fact that prostitution is considered a greater crime in America today than domestic battery, I am right with you. That's part of the issue with this stuff. Now, what he was convicted on is as interesting as what he wasn't convicted on. And the reason I'm talking about this on Manly Monday is, one, it was male prostitutes that were that were transported across state lines. And it was only the Mann Act that was originally called the White Slavery Act. That's where the law that he actually got convicted on came from. But it was like something like 1986 that they finally amended that law to include male sex workers. That law was designed, there was a lock up your daughters trend going on in the early 20th century where, foreigners were coming in, mainly Russian Jews that were the big bads then. And, these girls were going to get taken. They weren't protected by family and traditional courtship. And so we have to protect them from the big bad foreigners. But it also got used to catch cheating husbands who took their mistresses across state lines. And it has been used as something of a backup position for sex trafficking, because the way sex trafficking is done in real terms is these guys call these women their girlfriends, and basically they're trafficked in all but name, but it's not technically commercial sex until Diddy flew in the male prostitutes, right? That's a weird one. That's how I understand. We don't know why the jury made the decision they did. There's one article from an alternate jury calling the freak-offs pretty tame, which, all right, that juror's clearly got a very exciting sex life. But let's talk about kind of the underlying behaviors, why it's upsetting so many people, and what you as an individual guy can kind of do to navigate this mess, because there's strong feelings on all sides. So if you like this content, help support this channel, become a monthly patron, patreon.com/Leanna K, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/Leanna K. If you want to sign up for a Leanna Care session yourself, please do so. The link is in the description box below this video, and like and subscribe if you like this content. Now, the reason I think it's important to do Manly Monday is some people are saying it's the death of the Me Too movement. And my opinion on Me Too was always mixed. It radically... Shit, Mike. My cat messed up my mic, and so you will get peaks. There's been volume issues. But Me Too got crazy scope creep. And so I don't think it's the end of Me Too, because Me Too was all about initially just letting people talk about their experiences and not shutting it down. That's getting confused with things like Time's Up, which was, group action. And they're not the same thing. And the important thing to keep in mind that all the hysteria around this verdict and, the talk about, oh, Diddy can get his career back now. Well, he's got to serve his time first, right? Let's not get ahead of ourselves. And I do think, again, we're talking about regular people here, not celebrities. But when you only get convicted of the lesser charge, which carries a maximum of up to 10 years in prison, and you're just thrilled you didn't get convicted of racketeering, which is life in prison, that's time to consider your life choices. Do I think Diddy is a racketeer? RICO laws are beyond my expertise. They are super complicated. There's been a long history of Diddy being involved in some shady stuff. You may remember really way back in the day that in 1999, there was a shooting when he was still seeing J-Lo and someone else took the fall for it, but they were arrested. Someone else and the talk at the time was that Shine, a guy by the name of Moses Barrow, who went by Shine, took the fall for that shooting, that it was actually Diddy and Shine took the fall. And we've known that Diddy's not a great person for some time, but does that constitute a criminal enterprise or a conspiracy? And this is when you get into the minds of the juries, and when they think of RICO, they think of guys like, John Gotti and Al Capone, not the Bloods and the Crips, right? And if you want to call that racist, it is, but that's outside the purview of this video. I just know that I'm going to get called on it if I don't give an opinion there. So my opinion is officially, I don't know enough about the law to weigh in on that one. I do know that while the trial was going on, legal analysts who do know what they're talking about were saying that the racketeering charge was the absolute weakest thing that the prosecution had. And they said when the prosecution rested its case that they didn't think they'd met the burden on the racketeering charge. The sex trafficking one seems to have come down to they were his girlfriends, because it was Cassie Ventura, the woman who's in the video of hotel security cameras getting wailed on by Diddy. Like, the defense copped to the fact that Diddy beats his girlfriends. At least beat those girlfriends. He says he takes full responsibility. It was a low point of his life. They're owning the domestic abuse. Unfortunately, the statute of limitations lapsed on it. So they couldn't charge him with domestic abuse. And so the defense smartly said, well, yeah, we're not denying that he beat her. We're just saying he didn't traffic her as part of a criminal conspiracy. And it was a strategy that worked. Now, as a regular guy, right, do you want to be known as a guy who had to admit to beating multiple girlfriends to avoid a more serious charge. And a lot of guys out there are probably thinking, that sounds pretty serious to me. Exactly. This is probably not going to be a situation that you find yourself in. But I know a lot of guys are afraid of accusations. And this is what I want to reassure guys who haven't followed this and think that this is just another guy who is falsely accused by those bitches. This is not that. Okay, it's never just those bitches falsely accused him. Like Amber Heard is... That is a very real anomaly. You got to remember that in the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial, the owner of the trailer park where Amber Heard claimed that Johnny Depp violently raped her, said that the damage in the trailer that he saw was not consistent with her story. And he came forward on his own because he was watching the trial on the internet. That rarely happens. This was not a question of he said, she said, and they just didn't believe the poor victim. That was an exceptional case. And I don't think in this case, because that's the way it's being portrayed, right? People didn't believe Cassie Ventura. They didn't believe Jane. I don't think that's entirely true. I think that it is the wording of the law that, because in order to be convicted of sex trafficking, you have to coerce. I pulled it up. Human trafficking is exploitation of a person for labor, services, or commercial sex. Sex trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, obtaining, patronizing, or soliciting of a person for the purpose of a commercial sex act, in which a commercial sex act is induced by force, fraud, or coercion, or in which a person induced to perform such an act has not attained 18 years of age. So it's very possible the jury went, they were his girlfriends. Like, they convicted him of hiring prostitutes and transporting those prostitutes across state lines. They just didn't think that these women were engaged in a commercial sex act. That doesn't mean they don't believe them, that there wasn't, some sort of domestic abuse going on. That was not what the jury had to decide. And they, Diddy was convicted on precisely the law designed to just be general shenanigans, bad man. And yes, again, there are very racist backgrounds of that law. There's a lot of laws that have been on the books for a really, really long time that have evolved. And I do think that the additions to the law to protect men and minors, I think it's very important for people to hear that in 1986 it was added to include male prostitutes as well. It's not just about protecting women anymore or protecting the virtue of women. These are really important details. The likelihood of a regular guy being subject to these charges is much less likely than the charge that Jonathan Majors got convicted of. Remember him? Yeah, he's pretty much gone now. And that is one of those things that really feels unfair, right? That was a very, very minor charge compared to what Diddy is convicted of. I'm looking up what Jonathan Majors was exactly. So he was convicted of misdemeanor assault and harassment. And I believe it's misdemeanor negligent assault. So it wasn't planned. The jury didn't believe it was part of a pattern. All he got was a year of counseling. And it ended his career. Now, he may come back still, but, this idea that, oh, Diddy will be fine, not necessarily. But in both cases, there was a video. In the case of Jonathan Majors, what you think the video shows is highly dependent on which version of the video you saw. Because there was the brief one that I first saw, which shows him like shoving her back in the car, and she very likely hit her head in that part. But then there's another version of the video where after that, she gets back out of the car and chases him down the street past at least 3 cameras. Paints a very different picture, right? Now, obviously that is very, very different than a video of Cassie Ventura sprawled on a hotel hallway floor while Diddy's like kicking her and like wailing on her. And the look on Diddy's face is chilling in that video. And the fact that his technique was so solid that he kept that towel on the whole time. And we're talking apples and oranges here. And I do think that everybody can get behind separating a guy like Jonathan Majors, who clearly made some mistakes, but isn't Diddy and isn't R. Kelly, who did get convicted of racketeering, I believe. But this Diddy thing, I do believe that Diddy has not gone far enough to really own what he did. And PR reps are saying that that's going to be essential to a comeback. He needs to own what he did. He needs to take accountability. He needs to acknowledge that what he did was wrong. And that's where a lot of guys start going, no, never admit you're wrong. Never admit you're wrong. It's weakness. And that in situations like this was a mistake that Jonathan Majors' team, like his PR strategy, and maybe it was him. The law that Jonathan Majors was convicted on is designed to do exactly this. It's very difficult to defend against that particular charge of you accidentally did things that caused bodily harm to somebody. You didn't mean to, but it was an accident. The reason it's a misdemeanor is it's intended to be something where going to court's not worth it. Now, he thought it was important enough to clear his name. He rolled the dice. He lost. And from a PR perspective, like, yes, he did an interview owning his mistakes. It didn't quite go far enough to appease, the public. And the argument with Diddy is, well, people have known he's a piece of shit for so long, this isn't going to hurt him the same way Jonathan Majors was in a Marvel movie. And that's not fair. It's not. And that's the real challenge with all of this stuff. Whether you're a woman who's a victim of violence, whether you're a man accused of violence falsely, whether you're a man who was a victim of violence and people don't believe you because that's not something that happens to men, and your victim, your abuser may have been another man, it may have been a woman. It's an uphill battle for all victims in the justice system because it is criminally beyond reasonable doubt. And in these situations, reasonable doubt tends to be pretty easy to come by if the defense can kind of frame a narrative, and if a defendant is willing to go, well, I did some bad stuff, but not this. You can create reasonable doubt. It's very possible. In a civil suit, it's a preponderance of evidence standard, which is very different. And that's what was so notable with the Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial instead of the Johnny Depp UK Sun trial. They were very different trials. Both of those were preponderance of evidence. And, you know, with the Johnny Depp, the first one in the UK, I think the judge probably made the right call for the wrong reasons, because the judge flat out said, oh, you probably just blacked out and don't remember doing it. Johnny Depp had no history of ever blacking out. He, you know, mega pints. He was a long time addict. He had a tolerance. But the fact that that was the Sun that they sued, and the Sun accurately reported Amber Heard's story and that she was giving, and the commentary calling him a wife beater was based on that accurate reporting, yeah, it wasn't defamation. You know, what Amber Heard did, nudge wink, oh, I'm a figure associated with domestic violence. Everybody knew who she was talking about, right? So very different things. And the fact that he won based on preponderance of evidence, people are still fighting over that one. And I think again, the jury made the right call on that one. That is a very, very different situation than Diddy. And why am I doing all these caveats? Why am I doing all this stuff saying, yeah, this was my opinion, now this is on topic? This is the frustration that a lot of us have when dealing with these issues. You have to do all these caveats to show you are not a crank or a grifter before you actually get to your point. Because people will just dismiss you as fucking feminist, fucking woke, you know, when I say that Diddy is not a guy you should be cheering for. He's not a guy you should be defending. He is a guy that makes it harder for all other men, especially black men. Because not only is he, admitting to domestic violence as a defense, but he's also really, his defense team really use these stereotypes of he's a thug, not a gangster. He's a gangsta, not a gangster. And that's not seen as a criminal mastermind. It's seen as a savage who can't help himself. I don't agree. The guy's smart. He's been a business mogul for a long time. He knew exactly what he was doing. He liked the power. This is not applicable to men, including men who like to dom in BDSM. I covered this with the Neil Gaiman debacle. Oh my God, that guy's still not shutting up. And personally, I think we do need to, in cases like this, go, call balls and strikes as we see them. That's ironic, a terrible metaphor for Diddy. But this dude is not someone to defend. I don't think that it's the jury's fault, though there was some drama on that jury. I mean, I think if they had found him guilty on that conspiracy, that racketeering charge, there would have been an appeal because of the fact that on that charge, they said one juror couldn't follow instructions. But that charge was always a long shot. And that doesn't mean he's innocent. It means he was found not guilty of the more serious charges that he was charged with because statute of limitations is run out. And that's important because he admitted to abusing multiple romantic partners. This is not a guy to defend. And this is important because we have to go, no, that's bad, so that this behavior isn't normalized for men. Part of what the defense was preying on here. And I'm not, defense have to find the defense that's going to get their client the best result. You know, you're not trying to win a Nobel Peace Prize when you're a defense attorney. But they did prey on stereotypes of he's a thug, but he's not a criminal mastermind, right? And unfortunately, that does leverage negative stereotypes about men, especially black men, of being inherently predatory. They can't help it, but they're not geniuses, right? These things, the whole Diddy thing is a classic example of power and control. And I do think that the human trafficking charge does come down to the commercial sex act part. Because the people who would have been trafficked, coerced in those cases, were not committing commercial sex acts. The prostitutes were not his girlfriends. They were male prostitutes. And I do think that one of the things that came up is text messages saying, oh yeah, I can't wait. And this is, I think, one of these things that really, really scares guys. And so I want to touch on that a bit. The reason it is important to talk about this stuff, to assuage regular men's fears, because I patently disagree with the idea that all men are predators if they could get away with it. I know that's not true. I know so many guys who are absolutely horrified at if you see that tape, it's like, whoa, the Diddy tape. But it is that question of, how do I ever know that a woman is telling me the truth instead of just appealing to my ego, either because she's afraid of men or she's trying to manipulate me? And that's a fair fear. Good question. And it really is about greater behavior, right? If you don't trust her, you don't trust her, and listen to that. And that doesn't mean you tap her phone, and that doesn't mean you put a keylogger on her computer. If you don't trust her and the relationship, and if you think she'll accuse you of abuse when you end the relationship, start talking to people, start keeping track of things. Check the laws in your state about recording conversations. Some of them are two-party consent. You can't do it. But, tell people you trust what's going on. So there is a contemporaneous report. A lot of guys don't talk about this stuff. And it's very noble to not want to talk shit about your partner. I'm a big proponent of that myself. But And that goes for women as well as men. I can't stand those things where women are all sitting around complaining about the men in their lives. They make me deeply uncomfortable. I've stopped going to them. Can't stand those ladies' nights where that happens. But if there is a problem, you do have to talk about it. It is not betraying someone to tell the truth so that somebody can vouch for you if she does pull that shit. And it's rare, but it does happen. So trust your gut. If you don't feel like you can have a conversation, like, look, be honest about things you don't want to do. Tell me if there's a problem. You have to be prepared to hear it, right? Like, your ego has to withstand a little bit of bruising, emphasis on a little bit. There's a difference between someone saying, I'm really not into this and I'm really uncomfortable with these things, and accusations, attacks on your character, accusing you of negative intents that you don't have, so on and so forth, right? But one, you have to be prepared to hear no. And a lot of people think they can hear no, but they're less good at it, I'll say, than they actually think. Nobody likes to hear no, but handling no is an important life skill. But also, if you don't trust her, if you've caught her lying, if you've caught her setting things up, if you've caught her recording you without your consent, and doing kind of entrapment tactics and stuff like that, the best thing to do there, don't have a big blow up with her. Get out of the relationship. You're allowed to. And if there is a lot of talk of, oh, you're abandoning me, or everyone who's in my life leaves me eventually, and all that stuff, if people are talking that way, that's not someone who is really capable of a healthy relationship at that moment. And they either need to get help for that, individually or as a couple, or you have to decide whether for your own safety, it's better to not be in a romantic relationship with someone. And you have to ask yourself, are you, do you struggle with being alone? Is your self-worth tied to being in a relationship? Is it just about the sex because of what it says in this world about your status as a man in the era of the incel insult? These are not good reasons to be in a relationship. This is a sort of street proofing we have to start doing to protect men. And this is where some people say, but it's limiting freedoms. Well, yes, protection involves a certain curbing of unsafe behaviors. If you want men to be more protected, there are going to be some limits on behavior. This is the flip side of men don't tend to get called sluts. Certainly not as a grievous insult, right? And for all this talk about, oh, we don't slut shame. Slut shaming is alive and well, trust me. The minute you disagree with certain guys, Heston Piker, they go after your either sexual desirability or sexual proclivities, right? It still happens to women. It's just happening to men more as well. And if you're feeling driven, if you feel the need to be in a relationship, as opposed to thinking the relationship is healthy and validating for you, that's the danger zone, guys. If you're in a relationship and you are petrified of a false accusation, that says something about either your ability to trust your partner or your partner's trustworthiness. And please, before disaster strikes, really have a think about it. Talk to a friend or a professional about it. No relationship is better than a bad relationship. Don't let people run you down about the whole incel thing, because this is voluntary. This is not involuntary. It doesn't mean you can't get a woman. And a lot of guys believe that. A lot of guys have this, they look at major celebrities and think you have to be that to attract women. And believe it or not, there are guys that are not Diddy that engage in some of those same, wild shenanigans. They're just good at selecting women who are vulnerable to that stuff. They don't have the same levers of power, but they do make a lot of promises to certain women. Career promises, oh, I'll get you this, oh, I'll get you that. And they use them and never come through because all their connections were basically a lie. And there's a lot of those guys out there. I've had run-ins with some of them. One guy, he was sexually harassing women at an event I ran. And I knew when the minute a woman came to me to make a complaint, I knew it was true because he'd done the exact same thing to me. And I wasn't going to do anything for me because, I'm the event runner. I have power there. I can just tell him to fuck right off. Somebody else, not so much. And he accused me of discriminating against him because apparently he's hearing impaired. And maybe I shouldn't have said this, but what I immediately said was the inability to take no for an answer is not deafness under the law. Hearing impairment. I have hearing issues. I understand no. Guys like this do exist. You're not one of them. Great. It's okay to worry about the risk of a false accusation. But these celebrity cases are not regular people. Do regular women not get believed by the cops? Yeah, I'm one of them. The person in question happened to be a woman in my case, right? Do men get falsely accused by women? Yeah. Same woman in my case falsely accused her boyfriend of abuse. It's funny because she didn't stage it. She cut herself. The theory is to stop him from leaving. And that's why she went after me. Because at the time she was like, oh, somebody attacked me. A stranger attacked me. And it wasn't in the right place for that kind of attack. We were pretty sure at the time it was self-inflicted. And over time, the story changed to her boyfriend did it. Her boyfriend was not even in the apartment at the time. I know. That's why she's been stalking me ever since. Women like this exist. I'm not going to tell you they don't. But what I learned from these experiences is that, you know, if something seems sus, get out of it. If you need help getting out of it, please reach out. Talk to people. There are people like me who are willing to get stalked for decades to make sure a guy is safe, right? And to vouch that he did not do what he's accused of. But also, being afraid it's going to happen to you is not a good reason to defend guys like Diddy or never believe that any man abuses a woman, because there's video evidence of this one. And all you're doing when you do those nudge wink, oh no, he did nothing wrong, is you are normalizing man as predator. And that's precisely the stereotype we need to overturn for all of this stuff to get better. I think that domestic violence rates will go down when man as predator is not normalized, because then it's not real men take what they want, those bitches, right? Go out and show her you're a man. That kind of shit has to stop. It has to stop. It's abuse of teenage boys as well as women. So we got to do that, because then that'll stop people feeling like, I got to take control by any means necessary. But then it's also going to make the false accusations easier to spot, because one, it won't be so widespread. Two, we're able to go more nuanced and go, this guy has never shown any pattern of this, because, you know, Diddy's a shining example of the guys that do this. They don't do it to just one woman. It's serial. And they get more and more brazen. So this benefits everybody. And again, these celebrity cases don't have anything to do with the real life cases. I know, because I've seen the real life ones where a man was legitimately falsely accused. And I've seen more than one. And they are complicated. And you feel awful for the guy and you want to strangle the guy because there's certain things that certain guys do. It's like, what were you thinking? And that's human. But often what I've found is there ends up being evidence that she is lying. We live in an age, in one case, it was the guy happened to be at a grocery store and there was surveillance footage. It takes a while for these things to work through. Every false accusation is a tragedy. They are, again, rare. Very rare. But they do happen. Like I said, I'm aware of multiple ones myself. And there is sort of an anatomy of how they happen. If you are the friend of somebody who's claiming abuse, do not pressure them to go to the police. Do not go to the police on their behalf. They've got to be willing to do that themselves, because a large portion of false claims like this are, I've got this from cops. They lied because they were embarrassed, and then it became this big thing and they couldn't admit they're lying. It wasn't really an entrapment. It wasn't a nefarious intent. The one that's still stalking me, no, that was revenge. But usually that's not the way it goes. And I looked into this because I'm a reporter, but I wanted to make sense of this stuff. And, the most recent It's Not Therapy, it was from a men's mental health expert who talks about the bias against men in the system. Check out this podcast if you're interested. But he wrote a book called Hidden in Plain Sight. I believe it's how men, the subtitle is How Men's Fears of Women Shape Their Intimate Relationships. If you're walking around afraid of women, take a step. Check out the book. Do something about it. You deserve better. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. If you want to sign up for a Leanna Care session yourself, links in the description box below. Would be very happy to hear about you. Fill out the form, or like and subscribe if you like this content. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.